Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. Ukraine War Frontline update for the 18th of September 2023. Not a great deal of change along the front line from what I said this morning. A few bits and pieces to add in. I think it's somewhat positional anyway. It's quietened down the last few days, last week or so, in terms of, well, you could say even longer actually, in terms of the rotation that's taking place in the Velika Novosilka sector of the front line. And even Robotina has slowed down in terms of becoming attritional and grinding and positional. What's taken place in the north? Well, in fact, we'll go to Kenneth Gregg to just talk about this northern area, northeastern sector. Or axis. He says, who is Kenneth Gregg? He's a Finnish fighter that has fought, I think, in the past and is now doing mainly supporting work or voluntary work in the country. So from the front, we now have especially good news. The Russian attempts to get us to commit troops in the north have failed completely. As you have heard, they had gathered more than 100,000 soldiers and threatened with a major offensive. Now they've had to move all the so-called elite troops to the south. In addition, the Russians have started to reinforce the defences around Tokmak, which shows that they do not believe they can hold the lines at the line of contact. Okay, so this is the idea that there are 100,000 troops supposedly in the Luhansk region or Oblast. Russians were ready to go on a major offensive, except it's not 100,000 troops really. The frontline troops are going to be a fraction of that. I don't know, 10 to 20,000 maybe. And they were gearing up for a major offensive. They did a few things here and there. Kupiansk, they've improved their lines up there and around Novaya Rivka to the west of Svatova. But then they've been pushed back by the Ukrainian troops without them drawing on their counteroffensive resources. So it's been a bit of a damp squib in terms of what the Russians were kind of shaping up to do. Now, the claim here is that their elite troops have been sent down to the south, and I think that is broadly true. We've heard about the forces from Crimea area coming down, the VDV forces coming down to support the Robotina axis or sector. There's a number of elite troops down there apparently. In fact, I think the British intelligence report was talking about that possibly today. Yeah, so here it is. At full strength, such a force should constitute around 10,000 elite paratroopers, the ministry reported in its latest intelligence update. However, almost all the units are highly dramatically under strength. This, if we go to the Kiev Independent to sort of flesh out what they say. Right, Russia has likely redeployed at least 5 airborne regiments to the area of Robotina to reinforce a hard-pressed 58th Combined Arms Army, the UK ministry reported on September the 18th. At full strength, such a force should constitute around 10,000 elite paratroopers. However, almost all the units are highly likely dramatically under strength. The personnel were drawn from the 7th and 76th divisions of Russia's airborne troops, so many of these are up in Crimea and the axis that we were just talking about, also known as VDV according to the update. The UK Defence Ministry said that the VDV leadership would most likely consider the current situation highly unsatisfactory. Throughout the war, Russian commanders have attempted to regenerate their airborne forces as a highly mobile striking force for offensive operations. Once again, they're being used as line infantry to augment the overstretched ground forces. That is really significant, something I've talked about a lot in the past, which is when the Russians use their troops, their elite troops in this way, and they've been doing this for a long time now. They were doing this up in the Crimea area and along this whole axis. They've been doing that, for goodness knows most of the war. They are using their elite troops as basic infantry. They were doing that down in Vuhledar as well. Instead of crack attack troops, they're just using them as bog standard troops, and they get attrited as a result. And that, they're not only are they being thrown into the Robotina sector to do that same kind of stuff, like what you would expect the normal infantry to do, man the trenches and soak up the pressure from the Ukrainians. Not only are they being sent to do that, but they are already under strength because of the way that they've been used over the last year and a half, so that they are going to be not only the full complement of troops, but they would have been reconstituted time and time again with lower quality troops mobilized and others, and so the force quality is really a fraction of what it would have once been. Right. Anyway, back to Kenneth Gregg, who says, who continues with up at Bakhmut. In fact, we'll probably wait until we get to Bakhmut for that. So let's go now to the northeast sector. I'm going to go to Suriyat Maps that says, situation on the northeastern front. Recent video footage by RIA Novosti shows the Russian army storming Ukrainian troops positions north of Krokmalna. Troops retreated to the previous positions later. However, it's expected Russian forces will increase this kind of operation in order to check the strength of Ukrainian defenses in the Axis. I mean, goodness knows. So this is yet another place where the Russians appear to be probing in this general area. So we have seen, and we'll talk about Novoselivska in a minute, we've seen all the activity around Ryarodka and Novoherivka down there. We've seen activity up in Kupiansk. And now they're doing some kind of probing attack around Volodymyrivka into Krokmalna along this road here. Some kind of action as detailed by this map, just attacking up the road and then retreating to their original positions. I don't know why they would be expending energy and resources doing that. I mean, it's not really worked so far in terms of distracting the Ukrainian forces in this whole sector along this whole front line here. So I don't know. Anyway, Andrew Perpetua talks about some success for the Ukrainians, and this has just come out on a recent map update he's done, saying that I just posted the first map update of the day. The most interesting change is a video of Ukrainian assault on Novoselivska. Wow. So this is that's pretty interesting actually, because they had not had too much success there recently. They were pushed broadly almost entirely out of Novoselivska from Kuzumivka. The Russians came across the railway line and the road and pushed them out of this small village on the higher ground from Kuzumivka. But I think that would have been a bit of a frustration for the Ukrainians because they fought quite hard over that. It's changed hands a number of times. Here's a still from the video he's talking about, linked in that red dot. So this is the Russians shelling an area of Novoselivska, showing that the Ukrainians have indeed attacked there and are present in that area. So this is a case of pushing the Russian defensive lines back from broadly this last street along here, back a couple of streets. This will be grey zone. We'll have to see how that develops over time. Just to remind you what my mapping lines mean, here's the map legend. Please pause the video and check it out if you don't know what all the different colours signify. Right, going back to the northeastern axis, we then come down to past Ryarodka and to Dubrova, where, according to the Institute for the Study of War, there is some geolocated improvements for the Russian forces. Slight advances made south of Dubrova. So we'll go and check that out. This is from this Telegram channel that says artillery covers a handful of Muscovites walking through the forest with cluster munitions. So that signifies that Russians are in this position, and we'll plug that into my Google Maps to see what it has to say and see where the Russians are, and if that is indeed an advance. It's not behaving. Yes, it is. Okay, so that's exactly where Suriyat Maps has the Russian front line. So it may well be that, for example, you can see here that Andrew Perpetua is way behind Suriyat Maps' line for the Russian defences there. I guess ISW, I don't know what ISW's line is at the moment, but that would probably mean that it is indeed an advance for the Russians in this area. Suriyat Maps has them there anyway, so that's a bit of accurate mapping from Suriyat Maps. Shows no advance. So it depends which mapper you're looking at as to whether that signifies an advance or not. But anyway, useful to know. So perhaps a little bit of success for the Russians in that area. Right, we're going to come down now past Siversk and to the northern Bakhmut area, just to dip into the ISW to get an idea of Bakhmut before we go back to Kenneth Gregg. So Yevlash, spokesperson stated for the Ukrainians, stated that Ukrainian forces liberated Klishchiivka. Yep, we kind of know about that now, but that is still kind of big news. And Ukrainian forces released several videos from Klishchiivka during the day wherein they stated that they had liberated the settlement. So remember, the ISW report is compiled in the evening, so that this is from yesterday evening, my time. It's now midway through the afternoon the next day. So the Ukrainian announcements of the liberation show Ukrainian forces operating freely in the settlement. Russian mill bloggers denied that Ukrainian forces liberated Klishchiivka and claimed that Ukrainian forces only control the southern and central parts of the settlement. I think that's wishful thinking. Another mill blogger acknowledged the Russian forces have entrenched themselves near the railway east and northeast of Klishchiivka, but they do not maintain positions in the settlement itself. Footage published on September the 17th shows Ukrainian forces firing on Russian forces on the outskirts of Klishchiivka and forcing them to retreat. So that's from yesterday. Additional geolocated footage published on September the 16th indicates that Ukrainian forces made gains east of Orikovo, Vasilivka, which is north of Bakhmut, and we'll go there now. I will say, however, that I'm not sure that it indicates Ukrainian forces made gains in Orikovo, Vasilivka. So just to remind you where that is, we've got Bakhmut here, we've got Klishchiivka and Andrivka further down to the south of Bakhmut, and then up here in the northern area by the highway that comes in. Let's make sure we've got that selected. So the highway coming in the north, the E40 or M03, it comes by Orikovo, Vasilivka. There's some interesting contours and topography in this area. As you can see, this is kind of like a river, if you like, or a stream coming down. I'll see if I can show you on my 3D mapping here. I don't know how easy it is to see, but you can see that there's high ground sort of rising up from this sort of, I don't want to call it a valley, but a very shallow valley coming through there. And then if we come over here, you can see high ground up here coming down into a bit of a basin there. It's quite undulating around here. It's actually quite tough apparently to negotiate on foot, especially, you know, with a lot of equipment and whatnot. So you can see around here, if we come over to this area, it's kind of a similar kind of low ground, as I presume some kind of stream or river comes through there. Yeah, so that's the situation with regard to the topography in this area. Now, the Ukrainians have been pressuring down the side of this to the south of the highway around this area and having some success there. The ISW says that the Ukrainians have made geolocated gains here, but I don't know that you can necessarily say that. It's referring to a video of IEDs being dropped on Russians' heads, essentially, as they are sitting in their trenches. 2 drone drops by the 30th Ukrainian Mechanized Brigade on the Russian soldier inside a trench between the E40 road and Orikovo, Vasilivka. But that to me, it just says, well, this is where the Russians are, but there's no idea, no sense that that position is being taken. Actually, that pretty much aligns with exactly where Andrew Perpetua says the defensive line is. Surat Mats has them actually further back slightly, so who knew? But anyway, I don't know that does signify any advances for the Ukrainians, but there is activity in that northern area. So now we're going to come down to the south to Klishchiivka, and you can see lots of pins here. The idea in the ISW is that the Russians have been pushed back to this railway line. Some Russian mill bloggers claim they're still, you know, controlling parts of Klishchiivka in a significant way, but I don't think that's remotely true. I think they have been pushed back here, and both mappers agree with that. In fact, Surat Maps has the Russians pushed further back in this northeastern area of Klishchiivka, or an area to the northeast of Klishchiivka along the railway lines, maybe holding some positions in this tree line coming down towards the railway east of Klishchiivka. But essentially both of them showing some fairly significant gains for the Ukrainians in this area, as the Russians are consistently being pushed back there. Right, let's go and look at some of the claims concerning the area. Surat Map says that new video footage shows Ukrainian forces announcing full control over the town of Klishchiivka after almost 3 months of hard combat. In addition, some corrections were made some kilometers south showing that the Ukrainian army is closer to the town of Kurdyivka than previously thought. So this is just to come down a little bit here. Surat map showing that the Russians are a little bit further back than previously thought, but not as much as Andrew Perpetua believes. That he has the area on the edge of the town being a grey zone, and the Russians push back a little bit inside Kurdyivka. Anyway, we'll go back to what some of the other sources are saying about Klishchiivka. 80th Airborne Brigade, together with the 5th Assault Brigade and Special police forces from the Lyut Assault Brigade, liberated Klishchiivka. However, the enemy does not stop trying to recapture this village. It is an ongoing battle there, I guess, and the battle for Andriivka. Lots of footage coming out about this. I mean, there's some pretty hairy stuff in a lot of these bits of footage, and also quite a lot of video releases showing quite a few dead bodies in the area. As I said this morning, some of the Ukrainians are calling this place Klishchiivka stinky because of the smell of the dead bodies that haven't been cleared away from there. You can smell it from a couple of kilometers away, as according to reporting from Ukraine's video last night. So yeah, it's pretty rough around there. Battle for Andriivka and Klishchiivka has been pretty tough. Right, footage from storming operations in Klishchiivka that was recently liberated. What remains of this settlement are ruins, while the fields are littered with corpses. And indeed, in that footage, you can see it's littered with litter as well. I mean, the whole place is just a complete mess of people and detritus. Pretty challenging stuff around Andriivka and Klishchiivka. But it'll be interesting to see where the Ukrainians go next. They've got the Russians pinned back in the railway line, or in the dugouts along this railway line, but in a number of places actually past the railway line. So much so, it could well be that the Ukrainians have maybe moved further on today. So there have been some announcements today. As a result of Ukraine's successful actions, the enemy's defense line near Bakhmut was breached, and that's according to the Commander of Ground Forces, Sursky. Now, I don't know if that breach is just a general claim about this line that we've seen over the last week or so. So in a number of places, such as south of Andriivka, the railway line with its dugouts has been breached, and we understand it maybe to the north of Andriivka as well. So if that could just be what he's talking about, or there could be a major breach and there is a breakthrough whereby Ukrainian troops are actually doing more substantial maneuvers as we speak. I don't know what is going on exactly. I mean, this source says Ukrainian front in the battles in the direction of Bakhmut, the defense forces of Ukraine completely defeated the three most prepared brigades of the 72nd, 83rd and 31st of the Russian army. Fierce fighting continues in the Bakhmut region. The Russians are conducting numerous counterattacks, unsuccessfully trying to regain their positions. The liberation of Klishchiivka and Andriivka allowed the armed forces of Ukraine to break through the enemy's defensive line stretching from Bakhmut to Horlivka. I don't know if that's overselling it a little bit, because do you know what? You've got this kind of smaller line there. If that's been breached, then they'll just move back to this larger line. I don't think it's as massive as maybe that last source was claiming, but it is significant what is taking place at the moment. You can see on this kind of GIF the movement of the Russian forces, the Ukrainian forces over time, as they push back from the canal and are now up to the railway line and looking to continue going further to the east. Right, so that is pretty much what's going on in Bakhmut. If we come out of there now, there isn't anything else really to say all the way round until you get to the south. If we go to the ISW, the usual kind of claims about Avdiivka, but it's just sort of repelled attacks. No confirmed, I think. Well, it does say geolocated footage published on September the 16th indicates that Ukrainian forces had made further gains east of Krasnohorivka. Now, that is something that I did show the other day up here to the north of Avdiivka. So this is Avdiivka. We've got Opitny, Vodyanye, and then Krasnohorivka, and there was some slight gains for the Ukrainians here, and I think that's what the ISW is talking about, but I don't think that's anything that's happened particularly in the last 24 hours or so. That's from sort of 2 days ago plus. Anyway, we come down to Velika Novosilka, and several Russian sources claimed that, or reported that, fighting in this sector has largely assumed a positional nature, and claimed that some Ukrainian units are rotating in this area. And exactly what I would think that is going on there. And then the usual kind of repelled attacks and whatnot. So we'll kind of bypass Velika Novosilka and come to Robotyne. As you can see, no real mapping changes there from any of the mappers. Getty here says to the west and southwest of the village of Robotyne, so that's this one here, fighting continues in the direction of the villages of Verbove and Novoprokopivka. Positional battles continue between those two, and the Russian armed forces counterattack along the defensive line. The ISW says Russian mill bloggers claim that heavy fighting continues along the Robotyne-Verbove line, particularly in the direction of Novoprokopivka. One Russian source claimed that Ukrainian forces are using groups of 2 to 3 people to try to advance in south of Robotyne. And this kind of goes to the idea that actually they're not huge attacks taking place along the front line. I mean, Robotyne is one of the heaviest areas of heaviest fighting, and I don't know exactly how they're conducting themselves around here. Obviously there's a claim that there are attacks with only 2 to 3 people here and there, but I expect that, you know, in the areas of intense fighting to the west of Verbove, there will be a lot more being thrown into the mix. It is pretty tough around there, but no great detail coming out of that area. Russian infantry, this is a video on No Reports here. Russian infantry units attacking Ukrainian positions just outside Verbove confirms a further advance of Ukrainian units towards the settlement. I think this is fairly significant. I thought there was a geolocation of that. I don't know where that's gone now. Nonetheless, as far as I understand it, they are actually fighting fairly close now to Verbove in this sort of general area there. I'll see if I can find that on Andrew Perpetua's map. So on Perpetua's map, here we have Verbove and activity taking place quite close to Verbove. There's a grey zone, small area of grey zone between the Ukrainian and Russian lines. That should actually be red, that one. That's a Russian drone attack there on Ukrainian forces. So we know that the Ukrainian forces are there. And then over here, Russian counterattack taking place along these tree lines, but very close to Verbove indeed. So when we place the fortifications there, we can see that it is a case of trying to move down this trench line. But goodness me, how long they've been doing that now for? Probably approaching a week. So it's really slow going. The Russians are holding the Ukrainians back here and stopping them from making advances that are too quick. And all the while they're doing that, as we hear, they are building further fortifications around Tokmak, as well as elsewhere behind the Russian line. So there is a challenge there are ramifications to taking a long time to break through these Russian defensive lines. Other than that, not too much else to say. ISW gives no details of anything happening in the Kherson Oblast around Dnipro River. So that's pretty much it for today. A really relatively quiet day in terms of movements on the front line, just slow, attritional and grinding. We'll see if anything picks up for the frontline update for tomorrow. In the meantime, thank you so much. Take care. Speak soon.